evening. And to everyone joining us from the United States, Latin America, Europe, and Asia, and welcome to Discover What You Don't Know, the Benefits of Proactive ERP Monitoring. My name is Keith Thomas, and I'll be your host today. But before we dive into things, let's just quickly cover some logistical notes. Next slide. To eliminate background noise, we've muted everyone. However, we are very interested in interacting with you today. Mike, can you click to the next slide? We'll be running a number of polls during today's webcast, and we'll also be taking questions. Right now, our plan isn't to be stopping for questions, but you can ask them whenever they occur to you by simply clicking on the chat icon, which you can see at the upper right-hand corner. We've got a diagram there, typing in your question and hitting send. As I said, we're not planning on stopping for questions today, but at the end of the webcast, we do have plenty of time reserved for Q&A. Likewise, if we need to get back to you with more specifics, we'll do that research and also follow up later on. Next slide, Mike. Let's just offer a quick word about Core Services. Core Services was founded in 1990, and we're proud to be one of the first Oracle e-business suite hosting providers. And our focus is really on building and nurturing long-term relationships with our clients, and we do that through our comprehensive hosting and managed services. All of our solutions allow clients to benefit from maximum performance architecture, our multiple data centers, fully integrated disaster recovery, and of course, our best-in-class enterprise monitoring, which is our focus here today. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the presentation team. As I mentioned, my name is Keith Thomas, and I'm the marketing manager here at Core Services. But the real experts here are the gentlemen you see below my name. First, let me introduce Mike Rolfe. Mike is our Core Services Chief Technology Officer, and Mike brings us over 2 decades of providing strategic direction and managing large technology teams at multiple Fortune 100 companies. He has hands-on experience with distributed software solutions that utilize SOA principles, as well as cloud and SaaS enablement platforms. Mike is very active in the end-user communities. He served on the OAG's Fusion Middleware SIG, the Fusion Council, and the IOUC's Product Development Committee. So we're very happy to have Mike here. We're very lucky to have him. And second, we want to welcome Ron Gorab, who is from Scholastic, which is the world's largest publisher of children's books. And Ron has been there for 26 years. And currently, he's serving in the capacity as Vice President of Technology Services. And he oversees the order management, the warehouse management, the inventory planning systems across all lines of business. And as you can see, this is a company that publishes books in 45 languages and has operations in 150 countries. So that's quite an extensive portfolio of responsibilities he has there. And he's also managed the migration and consolidation from legacy environment to Oracle e-business suite. So we really want to thank Ron and welcome here today, who's going to share some of his experience as an end user. So without any further introductions, let's pass this on to Mike, who's going to lead us off. Mike.
Great. Thanks, Keith. So what we're going to talk a bit about today is give sort of an overview of where ERP monitoring is and how most people are looking at monitoring within their enterprise, and sort of talk about how, while there are some excellent tools out there, there are some things that are missed by these standard tools, and sort of go into, for those things that you're missing or that you wish you have, those things can hurt you and result in end-user dissatisfaction, issues related to customer response and processing of your business. So we're going to talk a bit about how Core Services has developed a framework that allows us to do proactive ERP monitoring and focus on monitoring that addresses business needs and not just looking at technology and tool performance. So if you look at today, there's a lot of tools that are very common in an ERP environment. Probably one that most everyone is familiar with is Oracle Enterprise Manager. All of these are excellent tools that are geared towards dealing with specific items. Enterprise Manager is excellent at looking at things like database performance, WebLogic, and middle-tier performance, seeing how your Oracle technology stack works. Then you have tools like SolarWinds, which does a great job of telling you, what is the overall utilization on my network? Am I seeing congestion? Is there packet loss? What is the statistics about my routers? And then you also get things like BMC and Tivoli and Foglight that may drill down a bit more and provide a view of your, more of a cohesive view of your technology platform. But things like these really are geared towards technology. Even things like EMC's Watch per Net does a great job of telling you about storage performance. Do I have hotspots on my disk? Is my storage filling up? Am I starting to see congestion on my SAN? But all of these really are designed to manage technology. So if you look at some of these tools, while they provide good information, for example, Enterprise Manager can watch hundreds of different pieces, points of interest within your database and your technology stack. But if you go and you turn on all these monitors, trying to get sort of a comprehensive view of your Oracle technology, Oracle is storing all that information in a database. And that database can start to grow exponentially and even cause congestion of its own. So now I actually need monitoring to monitor my monitors. Is Enterprise Manager catching all the alerts? Am I seeing performance issues in the monitoring system? So, I start to see challenges by trying to do this technology monitoring. Same thing with some of these networking tools. They're really designed to look at aggregate traffic. They really don't, and they're only looking at what's happening on the wire. They don't give me that view of how is what's happening in the network relate to the end user experience within the application. Is my issue that my network traffic for my ERP system congested? Is it conflicting with people that are maybe surfing the internet, or in the back end are running Netflix or something, or some audio streaming software? What is going on? I can't get that correlation between what's happening in my network and how it relates to the end user view within the application. Same thing with storage. Things like Watch per Net does a great job of telling you what your storage is doing, but it's talking about block I/O, things that are writing to and from disk, whereas your database and your application really cares about transactions. So I'm sort of talking apples and oranges here and trying to correlate how block I/O relates to database transactions can be difficult because I have one tool for the database and a separate tool for the storage that are talking about two different metrics. So core yes.
I'm going to go ahead and launch the first poll. I'm not sure how that's going to affect the screen. I just want to make that announcement. Sorry, go on.
Sure. So one thing, Core recognized this problem early on in our days as a managed service provider, that trying to do this correlation was difficult with existing tools. So Core went out and started to explore what other options there are, because while we really like Enterprise Manager and EMC's products for what they're designed to do, we needed a larger framework that was sort of separate from the individual tools and allowed us to sort of integrate and aggregate that data to make correlated decisions. So I needed to know, what Enterprise Manager was telling me about database transactional throughput and correlate that to what my storage array was telling me to see, was my issue within the application, the data, transactions between my database and app server, or was it something in my database to my storage array? Where did that problem occur? And so having a monitoring framework like Nagios allows us to do that correlation and even go out and augment that with additional data. So for example, if you're using Enterprise Manager and there is a custom monitor that you need, some specific piece of information you want to see, that's not easy to add to the Enterprise Manager framework. I either have to wait for Oracle to expand that, or I need some other way to address those issues. And by using something like Nagios that can look at multiple tools and even create additional and collect additional information, I'm able to get that larger view to tell what's going on. The other nice thing about a framework like this is I'm able to establish a system baseline. A lot of tools allow you to just set a threshold, and it's kind of a one-size-fits-all. What we've been able to do using the Nagios framework is we can actually look at and find what is the traditional baseline of a specific instance. What are end users, what is the typical usage pattern that we see? And by being able to establish that baseline that's tailored to a specific environment, we can start doing predictive analysis to see when we're going past our standard usage or past our standard baseline and make decisions for remediation of the issue. And we'll give some examples of that in a moment. The other thing about a tool like this, and we mentioned this earlier, is it allows me to quickly create custom monitors to respond to threats or issues or collect additional information to help us better address an issue. And we'll give some examples of that as well. And by using a tool like this that has sort of seamless integration not only to these technology-specific monitoring frameworks, being able to integrate, build them specific to a service solution like eBusiness Suite is key to providing a business view and offering business SLAs that end users care about. So let's give some examples here about rapid response. If probably a lot of you are familiar or read in the news back in late September, this bash shell shock vulnerability that came out. And basically what bash shell shock did was it made it so that it was relatively easy due to some flaws in the bash package for an individual to get access to the OS console of the system and basically gain entry to the system and gather information that they desired. So this is something obviously that's undesirable, and so Core was able to take the signatures that Cisco provided for our intrusion detection system that were offered, that Cisco put out within a couple hours of the vulnerability being recognized. We installed those into our IDS. We were able to use Nagios to collect that information that was coming from the IDS so that we could see if people were trying to exploit this vulnerability. And we were also able, within a couple hours, to create a custom monitor that could go out and pull through all of the thousands of systems hosted at Core and determine which systems were running a vulnerable version of bash that was vulnerable to this exploit. And so we came back and we were able to identify of the systems we had about 2,000 servers that had a version of bash that was vulnerable. Both of those are good pieces of information. However, what's really key is being able to correlate that information together. So I could actually look at what systems were people attempting to access the exploit while it was being blocked by the IDS. We wanted to remediate those systems first. So we could bubble those systems that were being exploited or that were attempting to be exploited with the list ones that were vulnerable and bubble those to the top of the list for quicker response. And we generated service requests to go out and remediate and install an updated version of bash that wasn't vulnerable to this issue. And we were able to do this for 2,000 servers in under 48 hours because of the way we could rapidly respond to a critical issue like this, something that would have been difficult to do with individual point tools. And how that relates, so this is an example of how some of what we're doing in terms of baselining and trending. So because we can create a baseline about disk usage, we can see and sort of project the rate of increase of a particular file system based on the baselining that we've done. So this was a service request. Nagios was able to see at 12:40 on February 17th that we were seeing increased growth of a file system beyond our expected normal growth rate. So within a couple minutes of it being detected, it generated a service request into our case management system. Now what's key here though is not only did it create a service request, we attached to that the remediation action. So the case got entered, it got assigned to an agent or an engineer to work on, along with the steps that they needed to perform to address the issue. You can see between the time that it was entered and assigned and the issue was actually resolved was about another 5 minutes. So within 10.5 minutes of a trend being identified where we were seeing an increased growth rate beyond what we expected that could potentially lead to performance issues, we were able to remediate and grow the file system so that we could prevent any sort of storage-related issue impacting end users. So by being able to respond and resolve within 10.5 minutes, there was no end user impact due to a potential issue within the technology stack. And that's because we could do this correlation and integration to provide not only the notification that the problem was trending, but how to resolve the issue as well. So all this is good because it deals with technology, but technology is not what the business really cares about. So while it's important to address servers that are slow or storage that's congested or slow network response, and the tools that exist today do an excellent job of doing that, that's not really what the business and end users care about. What the business focuses on are, can I process my web orders quickly in a timely fashion, or is slow performance causing those carts to be abandoned? So key processes like payroll or my MRP plans complete on time. I have my shift coming in to start their manufacturing shift at 9 o'clock. If my plan isn't going to have completed and generated all the work orders, those people are going to be sitting waiting for work to be assigned to them. So I'm losing productivity. I want to know if those issues are going to, if I haven't, if my MRP is not going to complete on time. Another is, am I meeting my order fulfillment SLAs to my customers? A good example of this, the Motorola has a order fulfillment SLA to AT&T that says from the time that Motorola receives the order to the time they actually have it on the dock ready to ship has to be less than 8 hours. So I need to be able to see where my orders are in the process to see if they're going to meet that customer SLA, because I have a give back where I have to give a discount to AT&T if I don't fulfill in time. So I want a notification early enough in that cycle that may allow me to expedite certain orders that are trending towards breaching that SLA. And having a monitoring system that while it can see the technology, but can do correlation to focus on those business issues is key to have a package that really is useful to end users. So with that, I'd like to maybe turn it over to Ron to talk about some of the business issues and challenges they've seen in their environment, and we can talk a bit about how CORE has helped them address those. So Ron?
Sure, thanks, Mike. So Scholastic, we rolled out Oracle E-Business Suite in 2007, and really the main thrust of it was an order-to-cash consolidation. We had many different business units at Scholastic, and we had made many acquisitions over the years, and many of them were running on legacy and homegrown order management systems, so we needed a good platform that we could consolidate onto. So we selected Oracle E-Business Suite and rolled our first line of business on in 2007. And things ran pretty smoothly at first, but as we consolidated more businesses on, it led to complexity of our environment. And I also should mention that we're not running full ERP under Oracle E-Business Suite. It's primarily our order-to-cash engine. So we have a lot of heavy and complex integration with non-Oracle systems for WMS, for financials, EBW, our customer and product data hubs are external to Oracle, so very complex integration as well. And as time went on, we started to have more and more performance issues. many of our businesses are very seasonal and revolve around the school year. So there are peaks, at various times during the school year, and lulls in the summer and the holiday months and all. But when we had peak processing times, we started to feel it more and more each year from a system performance standpoint. And as Mike said, to put it into business terms, I mean, from the technology team, we saw long-running batch jobs and all, but they were impacting, our order flow. So, whether it was our pick release job that took Oracle orders and pushed them down to our WMS system for fulfillment, pick release would run sometimes literally for 2-3 hours, which impacts our ability to get orders out the door to our customers in a timely manner and meet our delivery dates. And also from a business perspective, revenue recognition was something that was causing a lot of concerns because we would have delays when invoicing would run real long and it wouldn't hit the cutoff to get into GL that evening. So lots of business issues were being created as a result of the performance issues that we had. And it wasn't just batch jobs, really, interactive, forms users that were entering orders, posting payments, would at times see, severe slowdowns, and lags even just when tabbing from field to field. And obviously, again, that throttles the number of orders we can get through the system and also has a negative impact from having to throw more labor and perhaps overtime, to be able to meet our customer demands. So if we can move to the next slide, we have struggled, I'm going to say, pretty mightily over the last year or two to try to solve these performance problems. And, we kind of threw the kitchen sink at it. We didn't have great monitoring tools in-house, and, didn't have the, skill sets in the Oracle e-Business Suite arena that we felt we needed to solve this. So we brought in 2 different firms, outside consultants, to really try to look at our environment and give us recommendations and help us fix the problems. Some of those recommendations were for new hardware. There were a lot of recommendations around, tuning programs, but we really saw, marginal at best improvement. So we really spent a lot of time and money with 2 different firms and didn't really move the needle significantly in any way. So really a couple of months ago, we got introduced to Core, and they really have been able to make significant progress and really help us on this journey of improving our performance problems. They were able to zero in using their monitoring tools and isolate that really it was all I/O demand on the system that was causing the root cause of our performance problems. And they were really very effective, in my mind, at being able to isolate exactly where the biggest offenders were. So, I'll speak in more detail in some subsequent slides to some of the things that they've been able to help us with. But really, it's all about their methodology and the metrics-based approach, from my perspective, that really is a great recipe for success. So I really feel like we went from trying to find a needle in a haystack and really running from one recommendation to another without some solid metrics behind it, to being able to zero in precisely on what is causing our performance problems. And I'll turn it back over to Mike, and I'll give some more details in subsequent slides of specific things that Core has helped us with.
Great. Thanks, Ron. So why don't we get into a bit about some of the actual tools that Core has built that helps zero in on some of the problems that Ron was experiencing. Because as Ron pointed out, a lot of them were business-related problems, and trying to translate how that business problem was being impacted by the technology was key in resolving the issues. So one of the first things we looked at is Core has developed a set of monitors and tools that look at how functional response is within Oracle E-Business Suite. So we've done things that look at purge processes, page response, and concurrent request response to see, one, are they correctly configured? Is cleanup that's being expected, purge processes running as expected? Are they actively cleaning up information, or are we still having legacy artifacts out there within the system? And as we started doing some analysis around these purge processes and response time of some of these concurrent processes that were driving business functionality, like revenue recognition and the actual transmission of pick release, we started to notice that there was data collection and cleanup that wasn't occurring, was impacting underlying technology. And Ron pointed out a few of those processes just a moment ago. So we were able to identify, one, some cleanup that needed to occur from a purge and archive standpoint. That also led us to look at, was correlated with another set of tools that we have. And this has been an area that I think has given Ron a lot of benefit. So after we could determine that these particular processes were long running, we have this tool that we've developed that allows us to look at not only concurrent requests that are out here. So we can see here a concurrent request that was caught that had a performance issue in terms of I/O. We can also see that there's queries being run by developers using tools or even Discoverer that are putting a high load on the system. And Core has actually developed this tool. We developed it with Kerry Millsap, who's the author of Optimizing Oracle. He's a highly respected individual in the Oracle world for doing performance analysis and performance remediation. And we developed this system that allows us to look at what is ongoing in the system and rank, basically provide a ranking of the impact of those processes and SQL statements to your environment. So this isn't just what is the longest running process, but it's looking at a number of factors. It's looking at how often does the process run. Are there things that are occurring within or best practices that aren't being followed in the coding standards? So are there a lot of full table scans? Is there a lot of looping that's occurring within the query? Because just because something may be poorly written, if it only runs once a month, it's maybe not where you want to focus your time and consulting dollars to address the issue. So we're able to bubble up items that will have the most, quote, bang for the buck in terms of remediation. And those are some of the things we've been focusing on with Ron's team over the last month. So once we identify sort of these points of performance contention that are related to functionality within the applications or ancillary products that tie to the applications, such as Discoverer or warehouse management systems, we're able to focus in on the specific SQL statement that is causing the issue. So you don't have to go hunting through a large piece of code to find where's my problem occurring. We go, basically focus a laser pointer on the specific SQL statement that's causing the problem. So you know, where should I focus my tuning effort within this larger application that I have running? And this may be either custom code that has been developed by your internal staff or a consulting partner that you employed, or it may even be custom code or traditional code that's being provided by Oracle. And so based on this analysis, Core goes out and will assign, basically it creates a ticket when we see these problems, and our DBA team, application DBAs, sit down and sort of research the issue and do a performance analysis and come up with an action plan of how to remediate the problem. In some cases, if it's standard code from Oracle, there may already be a patch that's been issued to address the problem. Or based on the way that you use the application, you may be doing a query or a search on information different than Oracle expected when they seeded the code, and you need some additional indexing and partitioning criteria set up. So we actually will go through, Core goes through with the use of our tools and provide not only a focus on what you need to, where you'll get the most improvement, but how to actually approach that remediation effort. And once that resolution plan is developed and implemented, we have some ongoing monitoring that's looking to see, is the issue improving? Are we seeing a performance change within the system? So one of the things we have out there is an IO status dashboard that runs within our data center and also is available to customers through our client portal. And so this gives a nice high-level view of, on an hour-to-hour basis, what is the end-user response that I'm seeing within from the end-user perspective. And it actually will trend from green to yellow to red as that utilization, or as I start to exceed that baseline that I expect. And so I know that I have an issue trending that will shortly be end-user, have an end-user impact. And so I can start doing some of this resolution. The system automatically starts collecting snapshots of the state of your database and helps us start doing this analysis of what is causing the trend and focus in on whether it's SQL, whether it's storage, whether it's end-user load that requires scaling on how to remediate the issue. And same thing, we talked earlier, some of these request sets that for things that Ron was interested in, revenue recognition. There's a number of processes that need to run sequence to recognize revenue. And if one is being held up, it may prevent something further down in the process from occurring on time, or that is scheduled won't complete on time. Same thing on the manufacturing side. So we start monitoring these sets that drive a full process to make sure these steps are occurring in the timely fashion, that they're completing when we expect, so the overall larger business flow occurs in time. And our clients can sort of define these request sets and the desired runtime so that we can, and then can start tracking to that to make sure we're meeting their SLAs, such as Ron had mentioned. I've got a fulfillment, or I've got a fulfillment deadline that I have to ship an order to a customer. Are my processes going to complete in time so that I can make the pickup by my carrier? And each time we execute this cycle, Nagios is tracking not only each request in the request set, but the overall runtime. And so we can start analyzing over time, are we seeing a trend that time is increasing? In which case we should find out why. Is it due to volume? Is it because maybe a purge process isn't running that's doing cleanup for us? Or is it due to load, in which case I should increase resources available to drive the time down? And clients can even opt to get a phone call or a text message as these request set runtimes exceed their baseline, so that they know in advance when there's a problem trending, instead of coming in at the end or getting a call from their end user to say, hey, I'm not able to close the books because the revenue recognition process didn't complete on time. So we had a number of recommendations that from the diagnosis that we presented to Scholastic. So I don't know if, Ron, you want to touch a little bit on this, about some of the things that we've been doing?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So we are moving to Core as our managed service provider in March. And really one of the things that I've talked to some of the folks at Core about is that it's very important to us that we don't just pick up a poor performing system, which we've run on-prem since we went live in 2007, and move that over to Core, but that we really work to try to solve the performance problems so that as we move to Core in March, we say we're moving to a much better world, right? So Core, in addition to working with us on the migration, we have an effort going on where we've got a VPN tunnel. They've got their monitoring tools running over our on-prem e-business suite production environment today. As I mentioned, that has really, number one, allowed us to say with confidence we can see that it's really all about the I/O demand. It's not a CPU problem. It's not a memory issue or anything else, right? So, again, and Mike showed you some of this, what they were really able to produce is after running their monitoring tool over our environment for a while, within a week or so, they said, okay, here's your biggest performance issues. So it was a prioritized list that we're starting to attack. That was like the 12 or 15 biggest problems that we have. So the monitoring tool found those problems, ranked them, zeroed in if it was a SQL problem of exactly where it was, and then Core has been getting the right folks on their team engaged, the DBAs and developers, to help us resolve those problems. The other thing that they've brought to the table is and they've been great about, is really not just saying, okay, here's the fixed SQL, but here's exactly what we did, so that we can really make sure that our internal team here, the developers that are writing SQL code, are learning from this and really, understanding best practices and developing better code out of the gate going forward. So if we can move to the next slide, when we looked at that hit list of the 12, 15 things that were our biggest offenders, it was mainly concurrent manager requests and Toad queries, a lot of homegrown stuff that were the big offenders. And again, it wasn't just like, okay, this invoice interface program is your problem. It zeroed right in on the SQL statements that needed to be fixed. So a great example is that we have an inventory interface that keeps our Oracle e-business suite up to date with what current inventory levels are, because we have an external WMS system that is our system of record for inventory. So it is running every half hour or so and bringing information back to try to keep us current, or near real time in Oracle on what inventory is available to promise to orders. Well, the SQL for that inventory interface had some issues, right? So it was selecting two different sets of transaction types at the same time based on values that were passed into that code. So, within a couple of days, Core not just came up with a recommendation, but really split the query into two parts so that we had two separate query statements, one for each set of transaction types, and added a new index on a column that was really needed to be the main filter for the query. So after their work and running this, with a representative set of data in a non-prod environment, the concurrent request went from taking, like, on an average 30 to 90 minutes based on volume down to seconds, and I mean less than 10 seconds. So it was dramatic, and again, the big, translating that into business terms, if we can have that run in seconds, we're going to have much better capabilities around what inventory is available to promise to orders. So we're doing a better job of not dropping orders that aren't ready to fulfill, but also understanding when inventory is there and can be promised to an order. So great example of how quickly they were able to really remediate one of our biggest problems. Additionally, they've given us a list of patches that we had not applied, along with any pre- and post-requisites related to that patch that they feel will improve performance, and we've started down that path. They've also come up with specific configuration changes, such as increasing the redo log size, which should help with performance, and also proactively finding opportunities, such as removing closed workflows that have accumulated for years, and other opportunities where we might not have been running purge processes, and they're quick wins to just be able to do that. So again, I really have been incredibly impressed with how quickly they've been able to help us to get over some of these performance hurdles that we've struggled with for quite some time.
Great. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. So sort of summarize here, the way with the tools that we've provided is really giving you a way to proactively look at your ERP system at the business level. It's removing a lot of that ambiguity, because instead of focusing on just storage or just the database, it's providing this correlation between those different traditional areas of monitoring to make recommendations. And it's providing actionable data with targeted resolution, what needs to be done to solve the problem based on the trending and information we're seeing. And by doing that, we're able to focus on the business problems. What's going on with my pick release process? What's going on with my revenue recognition process? And not just focus on, what is the load on my servers? How is my network performing? I can focus on these business problems instead of just looking at technology. So Keith, with that, let me turn it back over to you. Keith?
Mike, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, I was on mute. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ron. So quickly, we are offering everyone who is on this webcast a chance to participate and get what we're calling an underperforming code assessment. The way this will work we will work to identify and prioritize your top 20 underperforming code issues. So if you want to do that, respond to the poll, which I'll put up here in just a moment. And we will reach out to you. We will provide you with a utility script to collect information from your instance. You'll then return the results to us, and we will go over your results in a 45, 60-minute conversation, talking about that, providing some recommendations, and obviously, there'll be opportunities to go deeper into, the types of solutions or services we can provide around those recommendations, if that's something that's interesting to you. So let me go ahead and pop up that poll question while we do get to your questions. Where's the poll? So we'll go ahead and put that up. So if you're interested in requesting an underperforming code assessment, go ahead and respond to the poll, and I will get to some of the questions here. One question that several of you have already asked is that, will you be able to get a copy of this presentation? And the answer is yes. Tomorrow we have it set up that the GoToMeeting interface will send you an automated mail, and we'll be uploading a recording of this presentation to our recordings page, and there'll be a link in there that you'll be able to use to download the presentation or to view it again. So I'll be happy to do that. Likewise, if you have colleagues who were not able to attend, they will likewise get an email which will allow them to view this as well. So that's one question I will take. Let's take a look at the questions we have pending here. Just a second. So our first question is coming in from Philip. Philip is asking, what type of overhead on your system do these type of monitoring solutions that you profile here today create?
Sure. So, thanks, Philip. That's a good question. Like we mentioned earlier, some systems like Enterprise Manager and others the agent that they install can put a significant load either on your system or have a load themselves where they have to be installed that causes performance issues unto itself. One of the things CORE is really focused on with our monitoring tools is to only deploy the components specific to individual nodes. So, if you have a node that's running just a database instance, then we're only going to deploy database monitors to that system. It isn't sort of a one-size-fits-all where everything gets deployed and only certain things are collected. By doing so, one, it cuts down significantly on space that's required, but also we've found that the overall load it puts on the system is pretty negligible. It's maybe doing a couple I/O cycles, and really it's not an impact on overall system performance that we have found to date.
Excellent, excellent. So let me go ahead and close the poll here. So those of you who have requested one, thank you. We will be getting in touch with you. Travis, I know you have a question pending, so I'll get to that here in a moment. So Travis had asked, and he'd asked this pretty early in our presentation. He wanted to know, you mentioned Nagios. What version of Nagios are we using?
So we use actually the open source version because we found some of the features in full-blown version that sort of makes it a little heavier than we would like. So we've done a lot to consolidate down the overall solution. We're currently running, or in the process of doing an upgrade to the 3.0, so that we can actually take advantage of some of the new inbuilt networking components in Nagios. But we've actually found, in attending some of the national conference that they have each year for Nagios up in Wisconsin, that we actually have probably one of the larger and more sophisticated Nagios instances out there in terms of size, complexity, and the number of custom components that are being run.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, and we have another code from, looks like Felipe. Felipe is asking, how long does it take to set up a monitoring system like this? It made it, the Scholastic person made it sound like it was very quickly, but it also sounds very complex. So what's the lead time you would need?
Sure. So that's something that's very important as a service provider, that we can deploy monitoring quickly, whether it's to a client site like we did for Ron at Scholastic, or as we build out additional servers and components instances for clients. And so basically all we have to do is define the various servers within our asset management system and identify what components are running on those individual systems. And our monitoring system automatically packages up the monitoring group and deploys it to that individual server. So I think in the case of, for Scholastic, we did it was a couple of days, really under a week. They asked us first to deploy it in one of their non-production instances because, being their first experience with CORE, they wanted to make sure that we really were being truthful in the amount of load that it presented. And we were able to do that in just a day or two to a multi-node rack instance with multiple middle-tier components. And then once they decided to release it also for their production environment, that was another day or two.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, let me just double-check the interface to see if there are any more questions. Doesn't look like we have any pending. So we really want to, if you have additional questions, you can email them, and we will be happy to answer you. So in closing, we want to, first of all, wish everyone a very happy holidays as they are upon us. And Ron, we really want to thank you for taking your time out here to talk to us today. We really greatly appreciate that. And of course, Mike, thanks for giving us such a thorough overview of proactive ERP enterprise monitoring.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Look forward to seeing you at our next webcast, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Take care.